Okay, you'll hear a lot of different approaches, and of course there are so many different ways to succeed and to get to grow a business. But I'm just going to give you my experience on getting through that second stage of growth. You're at a million ARR, maybe you're at 2 million ARR, hey, maybe you're at 500K, but you reach that first growth plateau where, and that's actually, if you really want to mark let me draw a quick graph here. I saw someone, the name's escaping me now, the guy who founded SmartBear did a really long, detailed piece on this, and it dovetailed with my experience. That growth curves actually, they're not hockey sticks, and they're not exponential, because that's what, if you compounded growth at 100% a year or 50% a year, then that just leads to an exponential curve. That's not what growth actually looks like. What it actually looks like is you find a growth mechanism that really works well, and then it limits out, and not just a growth mechanism, but a story, or even a product or feature capability, and then you get to a plateau, and then from that next plateau you've got to find the next one, and then the next one. So it ends up looking much more staircase-like, your journey from zero to whatever your next plateau is. Maybe, I'm saying 2 million, because that's personal experience, but maybe that plateau is at 1 million, maybe that plateau is at 10 million. But you get to that first plateau, what do you do to get to the next stage? What do you do to get to the next stage? And so let's say that you're at a place where you're hitting that plateau. In Hidden Lever's case, that plateau was hit. So HL plateau number 1, I'm going to say, so plateau 1 was at 2 million, and this was the plateau for the stress testing product. Our original product was portfolio stress testing, and just selling that product to financial advisors, that was our plateau. So we're stuck, not stuck, like if you actually look at our annual growth, you will see that it doesn't show up in the numbers, but we could perceive that, we need something more. Bear in mind, as a company, we were always innovating. We were doing something like 30 releases a year. That was our long-time average, was around between 30 and 35 releases a year to production, roughly once every 10 days or 3 times a month we would release. And so new features were coming out all the time, but fundamentally it was built around the same core. We have this stress testing capability, and maybe we were adding different investment types, asset classes that you could use it with. Maybe we were adding kind of more team features and things like that. Certain amounts of growth gets us to here. What's the next big plateau ignited by? Well, the truth is, in our case, it was ignited by innovation again. Only in this case, the innovation wasn't a random idea that sprung from my head or a random idea that sprung from my co-founder's head. Because at the outset, like the beginning of a startup, so often that's the case. It's something that you come upon, whether it's your passion or whether it's just an idea you have. Maybe you do hear about it from a client, but whether or not that was client-led in the first phase, in this second phase, and I wrote this backward, but I'll just put it here, client-led innovation. So that was what got us past the next stage. What turned out was that one of our major clients, and we were maybe hearing this a little bit from others too, but one of our major clients desperately wanted and needed a better way to generate client proposals. So if you've ever met with a financial advisor, then they probably leave you with, or somewhere along the way, they take you through a proposal, which is just a shiny PDF with all of their branding and all of their materials, and it goes through the investments, and it goes through their philosophy and strategy, and it goes through a bunch of different kind of sections, and then inevitably it talks probably about returns and with all the miles of disclaimers. Anyway, that document is tremendously valuable to financial advisors, and they spend an inordinate amount of time creating such documents. So what we heard from a client was, we love what you do, your technology, but can you make a next level proposal that incorporates all of your cool analytics? And so we said, okay, that sounds, it definitely sounds doable. And, they agreed actually to sign a substantial contract to help us do that. And so this is this company called Brookstone out of Chicago area. So Brookstone Capital Management, they were the client that led this next innovation, which for us was proposals. And we built this, with them as the anchor client. But immediately we knew this is applicable to everybody in the industry. So they're the anchor client. They get it first or during the beta phase, and as we're working it out, improving it, they're leading the feature request because they're paying for it. But mind you, this was a SaaS contract. They were not paying for like professional services here. All we did was we signed a larger SaaS contract to get them to agree, hey, we will build this for you as part of this larger contract. So that led to this new feature, which led to a whole new round of growth. So remember, I drew this kind of chart where you do this. That led to stage 2. So we hit this first kind of plateau here, and then that's really what drove us up to that next phase. If I mention this in the context of fraction, we're not yet at the end of the first plateau. We're still heading toward it, which is great, of course, on the one hand, but we can see that, the next innovation, the next things are needed, and we're listening to clients and we're hearing, about different innovations, different areas that they want us to tackle. Growth marketing is something that we're starting to do because that's been coming up. And so that could be one of those things that leads to that next arc of growth. And then teams, increasingly having a consolidated team offering that's easy to understand and to onboard. So those are 2. I should note that, hey, I'm throwing out, in real time with Fraction, some of these innovations that we're trying that we think will lead to a next wave of growth. We don't know which will succeed. This was the one that succeeded for Hidden Levers at that period of time. But there were a bunch of other things that we tried, which now it's been enough years. It's been roughly, well, maybe not a decade, but something like 8 years ago is when this happened. So I don't remember all the things that we tried and failed. I'd have to really go back in my notes. But we did try lots of other product innovation, and many of those things failed and were left on the cutting room floor, or they just weren't adopted by customers. We sunset the feature or hid it or something. This was the one that stuck. I guess the key point, though, here is this, which is getting from stage 1 to stage 2 is so often it's client-led innovation. So you got to keep on innovating. You got to keep on pushing your product or your offering forward, but having it be client-led and identifying those clients where you can lean in and really deliver something more for them. That's oftentimes where the next round of innovation will come from.